Mad King Kendrick. Ugh. Slygardian Knight. If I'm... Oh, that's her. If I may beg your pardon, your majesty, I can't help but think the queen was given less than full account. Her promise to King Pharamond hardly entailed this. The woman's accent was distinctly southern, with the intonation of someone who had spent a lot of time around Cillian, the capital of Slygard. She had to be someone important. If Her Highness had known your plan was to steal all of our finest for your own petty battles, I doubt highly much that she'd...
Woman, do you speak for the queen?
I come here on her behalf. The woman laughed. It's just as Her Highness said, that you were a stubborn old bull. The king gripped the arm of his throne.
For what purpose have you journeyed here, Captain? To satisfy a vendetta, or am I to know that Queen Charlotte should deign to send me insult through the mouth of another?
You've broken the queen's trust, your majesty. Your promise was to protect our lands, but all you've done is to plunder them. Leave our men to their families. We shan't continue to give up our lads for the sake of a whim. The queen demands that you provide due reason before...
It can't be done. The anger in the king's voice faded to almost quiet gravity. I wondered if the stories about him were false as well. His tone didn't strike me at all as mad. If you are requesting the return of your men, you ask in vain. As we speak, forces of Panservoy are mounting against us. Queen Charlotte knows as well as I that in this war against them we must stand together. Or Thera falls, who will remain to stand for Slygard? If, when, they attack, they will spare your people no more than they will ours. The naval forces of Quince alone will annihilate every hamlet on every coast of this land. Is that what you wish for Slygard? The woman clenched her fists. Leave me now. We shall not speak of this further. Advise your queen not to stir what has already been settled.
I knew there was no reasoning with a...
There you are!
I gasped and jumped as someone rushed up behind me.
What are you doing here? You know you really shouldn't be here.
Someone might think you're a spy. The prince laughed, and I could only give a weak smile in reply.
What is the meaning of this?
I had forgotten that my hand was still on the door. Thanks to the prince's jostling, the door of the throne room had swung open wider. The creaking of the hinges sounded like a death toll. It was really stupid to follow him here. I opened my mouth to apologize, but I was speechless, as always, at the most inconvenient time.
Welcome home, son. How was your trip?
The prince lowered his voice to mimic his father's.
Thank you for asking, father. I had a lovely time, but it's really good to be home.
He answered himself cheerfully.
That's wonderful, son. I love you, and I'm glad to see that you returned home safely.
Thank you, father. It's too bad that Alistair, now is not the time. A smile fell from Alistair's face. Oh, you've got company. The woman shook her head. Oh, I missed it. My bad. Wait, can I go back? Yeah, I can. Good. Okay. He's all yours. We're finished here. Without saying a farewell to the king, she turned and stalked towards the door. Just as she bristled between us, she stopped and stared at me. She reached out for me, and I flinched, but she only rustled my hair. Get out while you can, lad. It ain't too late for you yet. And with that, she was gone.
What a strange woman.
Now that she had left, I had a clear view of the throne room. Walking through the castle had brought up so many memories, ones that I couldn't put a name to, but this was one of the most vivid. It was also the worst. My heart dropped. In an instant, I felt tears well up in my eyes. It was wrong. The room looked wrong. Where King Hidret sat alone, there was a single throne, but hadn't there been two? Identical thrones, side by side, flanking a statue of Althea. The statue was still there, but
Now it sat in shadows behind the throne. But that was wrong. The statue was supposed to be in the front. That way, Our Lady of the Ice could shine her wisdom on the king and queen's judgment. Something inside me wanted very badly to run up and move the statue where it belonged, but all I could do was stand perfectly still. There was nothing that I could do about it, though I was quivering. I was more than saddened. I was angry. I didn't get angry often, annoyed or frustrated perhaps, but anger was never something that I ever had to struggle with. But I was feeling it now, and it was paralyzing me. Even if there had been no one around to stop me, I could not have moved. Thankfully, Alistair moved into my view. His flashy clothes were hard to miss. The king rose from the throne and started making his way towards the door as well.
Don't you have anything to say to me, father? What are you doing here, Alistair? What is he doing here?
The king pointed straight to me. His eyes burned into my chest.
One kneels in a king's presence, soldier.
I dropped to the floor immediately, hitting the stone a bit harder than intended. My knee ached, but I tried to keep the pain off my face. There was no sense in angering him further.
Well, it's nice to see you too, father. You know, I've been away for a long time. Perhaps you should have stayed away.
I wasn't looking up, so I couldn't see the king's expression, but he sounded more tired than angry. I expected him to be livid after being interrupted, but maybe it was a common occurrence with Alistair. I didn't need to look up to know that Alistair was pouting.
This is because I missed your birthday. I brought you a nice gift. Of course, I did lose it along the way. But it's a thought that counts, isn't it? You should know it was thanks to Aide Cordell here that I made it back safely. Those awful woods. They're just teeming with wolves. We really ought to. Enough. I will not put up with this.
He paused before he left the room.
You never change, Alistair.
Well, come on, get up. The prince laughed and pulled me up from the carpet.
You'll get a crick in your back if you keep kneeling like that.
This guy was unbelievable.
Come on, Aide Cordell. I finally figured out what I wanted to give you.
Alistair wrapped his arm around me, and my heart fluttered. I hoped to goddess that his hand didn't travel southward, otherwise he'd brush my chest. The prince had a much easier time navigating the castle than I did. He didn't let go of my arm as he swung in front of me. It was almost as though he was using me to slow his momentum, but I didn't feel like I was being pulled.
Close your eyes.
I felt massively uncomfortable doing what he said, but it wasn't as though I had much choice in the matter.
Okay, now open them. It's a sword.
The prince was, indeed, holding a sword in front of me. The scabbard was obscenely ornate, red velvet on leather with depictions of Althea waved through the gilded gold print. The handle was gold as well, and had a spherically cut gem for a pommel. It was also red, a ruby perhaps? It looked remarkably similar to the sword that I used to slay the wolf.
Well, go on.
I took the blade and removed it from its scabbard. The metal was very fine, and its balance was nearly perfect. There was no way that I could take something this nice.
Go on, it's okay. I've got 6 more of them in different colors, but they're mostly just for decoration. I don't even know how to use it.
There was no way that was true. I'd spent my life on a farm, and I knew how to swing a blade. Sure, my father was a great knight, but his was a warmongering king. It was impossible that he'd never been shown how to use one. Or maybe he had been, but couldn't grasp his lessons.
Do you like it? I think red is a good color for you.
I sheathed the weapon.
I know you already have a sword, but, well, this one is a gift from me.
I probably shouldn't wear it around the camp. I wouldn't want any of the men thinking that I had some sort of special relationship with the prince. Though, maybe the man just made a habit of giving out lavish presents to strangers? If that was the case, no one would really think much of it. I should at least trade out the scabbard for something more practical.
Well?
Oh, right, the prince asked me a direct question. I nodded.
Fantastic! Oh, tonight we should have some drinks at the Wailing Mermaid. All of the soldiers go there. It'll be fun.
I nodded again. I doubted I'd have much chance to go drinking, but there was no point in denying the man. Great. He clapped my shoulder firmly. I'll see you tonight then. The Wailing Mermaid. It's a tavern just outside the castle walls. Any soldier you ask can give you directions. I nodded. Good. Until then, Aide Cordell. He grabbed my free hand with both of his and gave it a vigorous shake. Prince Alistair was absolutely nothing like I'd expected. In Slygard, all I'd ever heard about him were tales about how bloodthirsty and lecherous he was, and that he was possibly even more dastardly than his father. I suppose it wasn't that surprising that he was being demonized at home. Mad King Kendrick had thoroughly ruined Orthea's good reputation with Slygard. I looked back at the scabbard. I'd probably want to wrap it in something before I brought it back to camp. I didn't have any gold, though. Maybe I could sell the scabbard and buy a cheaper one? No, this was a present from the prince. He probably wouldn't be too happy about that. I decided to tuck the scabbard under my arm for now. Maybe I could ask the assistant commander what to do with it when I got back. I got quite a few disparaging looks as I traveled the courtyard alone. It really was hard to tell what they disliked about me, but I was inclined to think it was my status as a soldier. It was also hard to imagine Orthians disliking Slygardians. The two countries had been allies since Slycard defected from Montecrest. They mutually benefited from one another. Orthea got cheaper farm resources from Slygard, and in return they offered education, culture, and until Montecrest was dissolved into Orthea, when King Kendrick came to power, protection. When King Pharamond had the crown, he proposed that Slygard send their boys to Orthea when they come of age so that they could train Slygard's young men in nearly anything their hearts desired. Most Slygardians only needed to stay for a year before they'd learned more than enough to benefit their people, and what started as kindness became a proud tradition for both kingdoms. I can honestly only blame the uniform for the dirty looks shot my way. I had to wonder what King Kendrick had done to his own people to make them so wary.